Good evening, everybody, and welcome to another segment of the Double Double. This is a homegrown True North fantasy football segment based off the world famous two cream and two sugar coffee that Canada has become so infamous for. And today I'm joined by Julien. Julien, how's it going?
Good, man. How you doing, Connor?
I am doing great. I'm excited to record our first double-double together, our first of hopefully many.
Yes.
And essentially, the double-double beyond the coffee premise is basically just we take two. We actually chose a QB, running back, wide receiver, tight ends. And we basically go, their ADPs are side by side based on position, maybe not necessarily side by side as ADP overall, but at position. So today we actually have the RB 30 and 31. So we'll actually kick it off with that since I used it as the example. RB 30 is in startups is Vaughn. He's the RB 30 going at pick 79. And our RB 31 is Raheem Mostert at an ADP of 80. So they actually ironically side by side as well. So who do you got out of those two?
Oh, so this one's really tough for me because I'm not a huge Vaughn believer, and I do think Mostert is a very talented player, but obviously with the news of him requesting a trade and just being in a backfield that is run by Kyle Shanahan, that's a blessing and a curse for running backs because you never know which week it's going to be. So for me, in a dynasty startup, I'm leaning Vaughn here. He's the younger asset. Mostert's 28 years old. This is a guy who might come in and not offer as much value right away as Mostert will, but I do think that he can come in and be a PPR guy and be able to complement Rojo quite nicely. So I'm taking Vaughn here.
Yeah, I honestly was kind of surprised by where both of these guys landed from an ADP perspective because I don't think either of them actually own starting jobs or starting roles. Keyshawn Vaughn for me, I'm a Ronald Jones truther. I was last year and I remain to this date. And Raheem Mostert for me, oh man, I do not love Raheem Mostert at all, and especially with the whole trade request being tossed around and wanting to be paid more. I mean, Mostert, prior to last season, played 4 seasons in the NFL, and I think the 4 seasons combined, he had maybe 400, max 500 yards from scrimmage. This man wants to be paid as like an RB2. He wants like $4.5 million, and he's 28 years old coming off 1 season of actual fantasy relevance. So I'm going with Keyshawn Vaughn on this one as well. I don't love Keyshawn Vaughn like kind of like what you said, but for me, a Keyshawn Vaughn Ronald Jones split works. It makes sense, I think. A Raheem Mostert, Tevin Coleman, Jerick McKinnon, Jeff Wilson, whatever other people you want to throw in there, that doesn't work for me. And like you said, Kyle Shanahan and the way he plays running backs. No, I don't love it. So I'm going with Keyshawn Vaughn on this one as well.
All right. I got a wide receiver duo for you.
Bring it on. Bring that on.
All right. So Tyler squared here. We got Tyler Lockett going as the wide receiver 31, and we got Tyler Boyd going as the wide receiver 32. Now, we were talking before, and these guys' ADP, I mean, it's wide receiver 31, 32, but they have the same number. I don't actually have that on hand, but I think you do. So it's pretty crazy. These guys are literally, you're picking hairs between them. So which way do you lean?
Oh, man, this is a tough one. You know what? Because I think both of these guys aren't getting talked about as much as they should be. And for me, I think Lockett received a lot of hate because of his famous disappearing act in fantasy playoffs, and people kind of gave him a lot of flack for that. And Tyler Boyd, for me, I love Tyler Boyd. I own him in a lot of leagues. I actually do. So you know what? For me, I'm going with Tyler Boyd on this one. And you know what? The reason I go with Tyler Boyd is because inevitably AJ Green will be injured. Inevitably Tyler Boyd will take over as a wide receiver 1, even despite the T. Higgins pick. And Tyler Boyd he's a beast in the slot. He is a really good slot receiver, and he will remain that way no matter what. T. Higgins and AJ Green, even if AJ Green remains healthy through the season, he's gonna be the slot guy there, and those two will be on the outside no matter what happens. He owns that slot, and I think he's an underrated slot receiver who deserves a little bit more respect than what he gets. I think he's coming off back-to-back 1,000-yard seasons, pretty much where he was thrown into being the wide receiver one because of AJ Green's injury history. So I think inevitably he becomes a wide receiver one at some point again this year due to an AJ Green trade or due to an AJ Green injury. Either one of the two is inevitable.
Yeah, I have to agree with you here. I'm on the Boyd side as well, but I do want to throw my 2 cents out there for Lockett, because there is a world where I take him over Boyd, but for me this comes down to what it is that my team needs. Do I need a guy who's going to get PPR peppered targets, or do I need a guy who can give me 40 points in 1 week? Because I don't think Boyd's given me that, but I know Tyler Lockett can. And so if this is a flex option, a second flex option, I'm probably taking Lockett here because he's going to give me those weeks where I can put him in there and I'm going to win weeks on his back. But if I went running back heavy and now I'm kind of not struggling, but I waited to grab a receiver, I think you can go out and get Tyler Boyd as your wide receiver one. If you have a Josh Jacobs and Saquon or something, Josh Jacobs and Mixon or something like that, right? Where you have a solid group that you can rely on, and then you're just putting this guy out there who's going to give you weekly points. But the point I really love about Tyler Boyd actually is Joe Burrow. He's coming to Cincy. We saw what he did with Justin Jefferson. Tyler Boyd and Justin Jefferson are very similar players in my eyes as far as their route running ability and like you said, the way that they play. So I think that with that, he's going to fill that role, and Burrow's going to pepper him with targets, and that's the guy that, especially in a full PPR league, that's the guy that I want to go and get. Just based off of sheer volume. That's really my motto is, you're on the field, you're getting opportunity, and when you see 8, 9, 10 targets a game, it's just more likely that you're going to be able to produce on a weekly basis.
Yeah, 100%. I think for me, Lockett's more of a he's more of that guy who I don't think I would trust him as my wide receiver one, and at the same point, I think I'd rather have him in like a best ball league where you can go with the ups and downs that is being a wide receiver for Russell Wilson, who really kind of likes to own the field as like a mobile quarterback, and they're clearly a run heavy offense in Seattle, and I think it remains that way with a duo of Carson and Hyde. But next up, I'll go with the tight ends. We will visit the tight end 13 and the tight end 14 today, and that is Mike Gesicki, a very much loved tight end on Twitter, and Hayden Hurst, who found himself in a new pass-heavy home in Atlanta. Mike Gesicki's actually the tight end 13 going at the 86th pick, and Hayden Hurst is the tight end 14 going at the 97th pick. Who do you got?
Yeah, so I'm actually gonna take the round value here and take Hurst. I think that with the departure of Austin Hooper, Mohamed Sanu, obviously in the middle of the year, I think that there is targets to go around, and these guys, they let Austin Hooper walk, and then they went out and got a high-profile athletic tight end in Hayden Hurst. So I don't think he's going to fill that exact role. I don't think he's going to get all the targets Austin Hooper did, because quite frankly, I think Austin Hooper's a more athletic guy. He's a better pass catcher. But I do think that there's a role already carved out for Hayden Hurst on this team, and I think he's going to go in and be a guy who can give you weekly, middling tight end points, and if he scores a touchdown, you're laughing. So to me, that's the guy I'm taking here, a full round later than Gesicki, despite them being back to back, and I think that there's volume that will come his way. And that's the pick I'm taking here. But that being said, I love Mike Gesicki's athletic profile. The guy's a freak. But, there's also worries. Do I want the third, fourth option on a bad offense, right? At least for this year. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, for me, this is a tough one for me as well, but I'm going to argue for the other side. I'm going with Mike Gesicki. I think Mike Gesicki proved when there was some injuries on the team, when Preston Williams got hurt And when Devontae Parker may have had his moments of struggle or issues with injury, Mike Gesicki was always there. He proved he could be a viable number one receiving option. And I think you kind of alluded to the fact that you wouldn't want to take on a guy who may be the third or the fourth option. I don't necessarily believe he's going to be the third or fourth option. I actually think that he's going to end up probably the second option beside whichever wide receiver is having the better day, whether it be Devontae Parker, Preston Williams, or whoever Tua or Ryan Fitzpatrick decides to throw to in that week. I think Gesicki is the second option, and I think he proves a very viable safety blanket when you consider the fact that I don't really trust Breida or Jordan Howard as your safety blanket if pressure collapses and you need that quick throw and that guarantee catch. I think Mike Gesicki can actually offer that. And Gesicki's young. He's going to start to create that relationship with Tua. He's going to grow with Tua. And I think he's going to become one of Tua's favorite targets and someone who's going to have a really bright future at the tight end position. And his athletic profile, like you said, is amazing. Whereas with Hayden Hurst, I'm not necessarily sold on he can take on that Austin Hooper role. I don't think he continues I think he's got like a 75 or 80% catch rate. He's got an incredible catch rate that I don't think will continue when you take on the fact that he might eat up 75, 80, 85 targets in a super pass heavy offense. And I think they brought in no one actually, they got rid of anyone who had any relevance in the red zone minus Russell Gage last season. And my issue becomes, I think they signed literally the red zone machine in Todd Gurley. And that's why I don't trust Hayden Hurst in the red zone. The two top red zone targets were Hooper and Russell Gage last season. Russell Gage remains. Hayden Hurst comes in with no proven necessarily red zone presence. Todd Gurley comes in as the bull of a red zone. He owns that red zone. And I think that the Atlanta Falcons will use that. And I think that's going to hurt Hayden Hurst's value. I think he can catch the ball and he can become a viable target. But will he be able to really prove himself in that red zone beside Julio Jones, Calvin Ridley, and Todd Gurley? It's a heavy risk to take where I don't know if he'll necessarily get the touchdowns he needs that Hooper did get.
Yeah, I think that's a fair point. And one thing I wanted to bring up as well after hearing what you had to say is, I think that there is a world where he isn't able to be that viable option. But I also think that, with the amount of pressure that's going to be put on defenses between, Calvin Ridley taking another step and Julio Jones, plus you talked about Russell Gage in the red zone, right? That just leaves this big 6'2" guy open, right? Matched up against linebackers and small safeties and whatnot. So I think that there is a world where he can be a viable option, and yeah, I'm excited to see which way that plays out. Because honestly, at the end of the year, I could see it going either way. I do really like Mike Gesicki. I like what you have to say, especially about him developing with Tua, because I'm a big Tua believer. I really hope he can stay healthy, because I think that this guy can be a phenomenal quarterback in the NFL. I'm really hoping for the best for him. So. Yeah,
I agree. I'm on board with you. I'm Tua. I was always me and Gymnastic. We were all over Tua over Joe Burrow, and we already have him as QB1 over Joe Burrow. So despite how the draft went and despite how some drafts are going, so I'm still holding out for him in Miami. And even if it starts with Fitzpatrick, I mean, at the end of the day, it's going to be a pass-heavy offense because they're going to have a negative game script again. So it bodes well for Gesicki.
And we saw it. Yeah, we saw it work, right? We saw it work last year. We saw what they were able to do once they actually had a pass catcher who, he showed up for once, right? Now they got Preston Williams and Gesicki and Devontae Parker there. Plus, I really do like Jordan Howard and Matt Breida. I think that those two will complement each other nicely and be able to actually take the workload from the running backs of that team. They had nothing last year, right? They had no run game at all. So I think that these two are, they're big bounce back candidates. But Jordan Howard actually had a really good year when he was playing last year, but the injury and then he's a free agent. So yeah.
As an Eagles fan, as an Eagles fan, I can say Jordan Howard did do really well, but the injury was a blessing in disguise ultimately at the
True.
end, because we got to see Miles Sanders, who's being drafted crazy high. But you know what? I honestly do believe that tight end 13 and 14 is cheap to get these two, because I think they're both going to be
Yeah, I
top
think they
10
both
tight ends
finished
this
high.
year.
Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. But I mean, when a lot of people talk about a pass heavy offense in Atlanta, if you actually take a look back at Devontae Freeman's time in Atlanta, you would be shocked to see A, how often they target him, and B, how often they actually run the ball. Just the sheer amount of plays that this team runs in general is
Yeah, that's very true.
insane.
Fast
So,
paced.
I mean, I think it's important to look at that when you're considering Hayden Hurst as well. Just the sheer volume that the running backs get, and you have Todd Gurley is better than Devontae Freeman. Let's be honest. Let's be serious here. He is, and he will command that attention as well.
For sure. All right, so let's move on. I got two quarterbacks here for you. One is 31 years old, and the other one's 36, I believe. But their ADPs are QB 14 and 15. I got Matt Stafford as QB 14 off the board and Aaron Rodgers at 15. Who do you want in Dynasty and why? Go.
Matt Stafford all the way, baby. That when they back in the day when they first signed that contract, it was a steal of a contract, and now you're looking at the $45 million man in Patty Mahomes, and you're sitting there and you're like, wow, that $25 million contract is gold, and it definitely is. And like you said, you kind of alluded to it, the 36-year-old Aaron Rodgers, who has never been given any beyond Devontae Adams, he has never been given a viable tight end option, really, a wide receiver 2. Like, he's never had the options there. He's a pass hungry, pass heavy guy, but he doesn't get the options. You can't pass the Devontae Adams 200 times in a season, because defenses eventually read that. You can try, but the defenses eventually read that, and you just cannot continue to throw to the same guy. Now, I do think that their wide receivers are being underrated quite severely this year, in Alan Lazard at wide receiver 2 and Devin Funchess at wide receiver 3. So I'm interested to see what happens there. But they did also draft Jordan Love, which begs a question. You have a young coach who's trying to build his team, who's trying to get his team. Aaron Rodgers is 36 years old. He's owed a lion's share of salary cap. I think that his time may be closer to the end than people want to believe, and he will go somewhere and he will blow up, because he will have the proper viable weapons to work with, kind of like Tom Brady that we're going to see this year. So back to my point on Matt Stafford, though. Matt Stafford's got the viable options. Marvin Jones, the world's most underrated wide receiver. You got Kenny Golladay, the blow up guy there. You got DeAndre Swift, who I love the talent that you get in DeAndre Swift. You got Kerryon Johnson. If he can be healthy, he's an extremely viable running back option. And then you got TJ Hawkinson coming out as a tight end. You got Quintus Cephas, who I think is an underrated wide receiver for Dynasty. He's got weapons all over the place. The man loves to throw the ball. My fingers are just crossed for him that he can stay healthy, because Kenny Golladay was well on his way to being probably wide receiver 2 behind Michael Thomas if it wasn't for Stafford's injury and catching balls from. We don't need to go too far into detail on that. But he was well on his way, and Marvin Jones probably would have easily been a high-end wide receiver 2 option with Matt Stafford throwing the ball. So assuming Matt Stafford's health, which they did nothing to protect him any further, then he's the viable candidate. He is the option to take there at wide receiver.
I do agree with you here. There's a plethora of reasons, but the biggest one, you actually alluded to it, was it's more about not wanting Aaron Rodgers than really wanting Matt Stafford. Well, arguably, there's a lot of red flags. You brought up Matt LaFleur and bringing in Jordan Love, AJ Dillon, even like that offense is shifting. You can see it, and if you can't, then you're blind and you're ignorant to it. But it is shifting, and I totally agree. I think Aaron Rodgers is out the door. He might be gone next year. We don't know. I think he's there for this year, but I love Devontae Adams, but I don't think that he's, like you said, you can't feed him 200 times, so where's he going to go with the ball, right? They just went out, they drafted a big, bruising running back. Matt LaFleur has worked with Mike Vrabel over in Tennessee, and he's seen that offense, the way that it works, and that's what he's trying to build there. It screams don't buy into this to me. Don't buy Aaron Rodgers. 36 years old, just not a guy that I'm excited to put into my roster on a weekly basis. So, and like you had said, Matt Stafford, man, he was on pace for over 5,000 yards last year before the back injury, over 35 touchdowns. This guy is a great quarterback. As long as he can stay healthy, I don't see a world where he isn't able to produce. I have him finishing top 8, top 7. If he's playing the whole season, I don't see why that's not possible, especially based off the weapons that you're talking about. I mean, TJ Hawkinson and Kenny Golladay, those two they're both huge, big play guys who can take any play to the house, right? You get the ball in their hands and they're in space, and then you got Marvin Jones, who's just filling out that wide receiver 2 role, and he's Mr. Reliable. He just is always open. He's always open in the underneath in those dig routes and those all those slants and whatnot. So I think that for Stafford, he's got more reliable weapons. He's younger. The health is a little concerned, but we've seen Aaron Rodgers get injured as of late in the past couple of years as well. So I think the injury concern is creeping up on him too, and I don't see a world where Matt Stafford doesn't outproduce Aaron Rodgers this year. I really don't. And I'm a Packers fan.
I agree. I 100% agree with that. I mean, it's tough to watch the Packers because they're letting an incredible talent in Aaron Rodgers go to waste.
For sure. Yeah, that's not a knock on Aaron Rodgers. I'm realizing now that's kind of how it sounds, but it's not a knock on the system that they have in Green Bay, right? I think they're shifting to a run-heavy offense. Aaron Rodgers is not going to be able to do the things that he's always done, where he's able to just call plays at the line, change things on the fly, and in the red zone too. Like, you look back, he had three finishes as the QB1. I think it was 2015, 16, 17, and those were great years. But when you actually go back and you watch, they don't run the ball in the red zone. They're passing the ball all the time. And then you look at Aaron Jones, who had 19 touchdowns last year, and then you look at the draft and they bring in a powerful run-heavy back who is just going to wear you down. That's the whole idea. He's a red zone back. I don't see, he's not going to get the touchdowns that he had in the red zone. He doesn't have the weapons between the 20s to be able to compete with the higher end QB options in fantasy. I don't see a world. I don't even know if Aaron Rodgers is a wide receiver or a QB1, to be honest. I really don't.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, it's tough to see a world where he is in the way that the QB market looks now. I mean, you got Dak Prescott, who emerged. You got Josh Allen, who we think will emerge a bit more. I think will emerge a bit more. You got Carson Wentz, who's getting more weapons. There's so many options out there of people who are getting more weapons who are becoming viable fantasy options versus Aaron Rodgers.
Mm-hmm. For sure. Right? They have weapons. Some of these guys too, they're going to situations where they have weapons, right? Like let me throw this one out. I know we did Stafford for Rodgers, but what if it's Teddy Bridgewater or Rodgers? Who are you taking there?
Oof, that's a tough one. I'm going Aaron Rodgers only because I don't trust Teddy Bridgewater from a throwing perspective and from a creating a lot of offense perspective. But I love the weapons he has to turn to in DJ Moore and Christian McCaffrey. Those two I'll take any day, every day, because that's his downfield weapon, and that's his guy that he can fall back on when the pocket collapses around him.
For sure. And with Curtis Samuel and Robbie Anderson there, I don't think that they're great fantasy options, but I think they're great for the team. When you got two extremely fast guys out there, you got to respect them, right? Teddy's not known for throwing the ball down the field a whole lot, which is why I love DJ Moore this year and Christian McCaffrey. But I do think that, he's going to give you 250 yards and 2 touchdowns almost every week. I think that that's viable, whereas Aaron Rodgers is, we saw it last year. He gave you weeks where he scored 7 points, and then he gave you a couple weeks where he scored 40, right? A lot of that falling back on Aaron Jones. So, the 2-yard dump-offs or whatever in the red zone, right? So, to me, that's the question is what are you banking on from your quarterback, and what are you more comfortable with? Do you want the consistency or do you want the boom weeks?
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I mean, it's tough to go with Aaron Rodgers. It's tough to trust whatever's happened in Green Bay. I mean, Green Bay kind of looks a lot like the New England Patriots of last year. They got an amazing defense. I would put my money on teams having a hard time scoring on it, but I would also put money on they're going to have a hard time scoring points back to support that defense. So,
sure.
but yeah, this has been awesome. This has been a good time, Julien.
Yeah,
And
a lot of fun.
yeah, absolutely. You can follow me at Connor10, that's TEN on Twitter. And where can they find you, Julien?
You can find me at the point after FF, or you can follow my personal at Julien_Barnett on Twitter.
Should probably follow both because he's trying to grow his personal account. It looks a little abysmal.
On there.
So you could go and try and be his 100th follower or something.
Yeah.
But yeah, this
giveaway 100th personal follower.
But yeah, this is a good time, and we'll definitely have another double, and hopefully we'll get some more people involved because as the season approaches, these side by side people are going to become even more important, especially when you look at them in redraft leagues. Maybe not so much in the dynasty startups, but when you're looking at redraft leagues, these ones, they could be big difference makers in who you pick.
Especially when we're talking about rookies, we had talked earlier about maybe doing a Justin Jefferson Rager. To me, that's a great redraft question because I think both those guys have redraft value, but it's, there's a lot to analyze there. So,
yeah. 100%. Yeah, so perfect thing. And don't forget to follow everyone at the True North Fantasy Football group, the whole group, and I'm sure the Twitter's going to be around us here and as we do this call on Skype. I'm sure the Twitter handle will be around here, and we're extremely active, and we're loving the Scott Fish Bowl season and everything. So give us all a follow. 100%. Thanks so much. Have a good night.
See you later, guys.